I had to tell my other bridesmaids to translate to help her out. So what else is
Yeah.
What am I? What's over One thing, I told them.
Okay, good morning everybody. Hello. So good to have you here. I'm sorry that we're starting slightly late. The Peace Justice Witness, the newbies were so excited by that training that ran on. So thank you for waiting, really appreciate your patience. My name's Annie, for those of you who I don't know, that's a few. I'm the assistant minister at a church called Christ Church in Kenilworth, and I'm part of a core team that have been part of this initiative of training Peace Justice Witnesses and today Peace Justice Monitors for something that's part of a bigger initiative called More Than Peace, which was really initiated by churches asking how can the church engage in the protests that have been happening over the last 18 months in particular, whether that's on campuses or service delivery protests. And recognising that the church had a role, perhaps a prophetic role, in engaging in these protests, but we also wanted to equip civil society ourselves, recognising that the church is part of civil society, to equip civil society for peace building and peacemaking in different ways. So for the last 2 weeks, the Peace Justice Witnesses that we've been training have been deployed onto lots of the campuses across the Western Cape here. We've also had people training now in Gauteng, in KZN, Grahamstown are also going to be next. Where else am I missing? PE we've just connected with, and they've actually been training not Peace Justice Witnesses, but observers, and have been very effective in mobilising. So we're partnering with them too. So we're seeing across the country this kind of role as a Peace Justice Witness emerging and developing. But as we've been on campuses, I think several of us who perhaps have a bit more confidence, or perhaps we're just a little bit more risk-taking, have found ourselves in situations saying, as an observer, I recognise the power of being an observer right now. We've seen the impact of observers being in the midst of protests and how sometimes it's helped diffuse or de-escalate the growing tensions. But at times we just thought, gosh, if only there was someone here who could step in right now, could step between police and private security and protesters, who could be that calming voice, who has the skill. Hello?
On the microphone. There we go. Now I don't have to shout. Who can be somebody who has conflict resolution skills, who has some negotiation skills. And we have mediators with us today who've come to do the training, and so on several occasions we wanted to call in the mediators, but recognising it wasn't actually the mediator's role. What we needed was monitors to be there. So we reached the point of saying what we need to do is train and have monitors who are part of those peace witnessing teams. And they can be the person who can step in. So that's why you're here. Maybe you didn't realise that's why you're here and you want to leave now, but that's why you're here. So we're really grateful that you're here. Thank you so much, and looking forward to this training this morning. We have two trainers with us, mediators called Eldred and Khalid, who's out the front. And we're really grateful to have you here. You're both very, very welcome. And as the training goes on, there'll be opportunities for Q&A at different points, and then especially at the end. So make a note of your questions as and when they pop up, and we will definitely get to them. There's obviously tea and coffee at the back. Bathrooms are here. I don't think there's any other things maybe you need to know, but do shout. Oh yeah, we need you to give us your details. So there'll be clipboards going around, and that way we can stay in touch with you and we can forward you documents or PowerPoints and that sort of thing. So do sign up, that'd be great. Eldred, over to you. You're very welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, I think as an African, I speak probably not enough, but I'll try to keep this as far away from you as possible. As you heard, my name is Eldred, and convention has it that it's apparently Old Welsh, and it means wise advisor. So apparently I have bestowed on me the wisdom of the elders through the ages. It's not a name I particularly live up to. I suppose I've made enough mistakes and have enough hindsight to be filled with wisdom at this time. Okay, so Khalid and I will be running this session. We've known each other for 20 years or so, doing pretty much this work since the mid-80s. Either throwing stones or being on the other side trying to get people not to throw stones. That's the conversation for another day. Since then, so this is Khalid, if you haven't met him in the previous session. At our work at the Center for Conflict Resolution that used to be part of the University of Cape Town, it's not now, that politics aside, a lot of what we've done was exact this, prepare people for this role and actively play this role ourselves, whether it's here or elsewhere in the world. So what we're going to do today is much more of a conversation. There's no PowerPoint, there's no whatever, it's drawing on the collective wisdom in the room and recognizing that all of us have intervened at some point in something and bear the scars and blunts and the successes that comes with doing so. So it's a lot more of a conversation. We're going to start the conversation off by simply you turning to the people around you and saying who you are. But in saying who you are, this is the nub of the question. Clarify or explain your role as a monitor to each other. So beyond your name, Rowan, and saying, hey, I'm Rowan, I'm a monitor, and this is what I do, or this is who I am, or this is what I bring to that role. Because for a large part of the first initial stab at this, we're going to clarify the role. Then we're going to get into the skills, and then we're going to get into something called your toolkit as a monitor. And just looking around the room, if I sent most of you out now and deploy you, I'll be very worried. Not just because, well, we'll get to why I would be worried. So get back to me at some point and ask me why, John, or why, Martin, am I worried that if I should send you out now, they would, it may be a bit of a mistake.
I'll be worried too.
You'll be worried too. Okay. So just turn to each other, have a bit of a 5-minute conversation, and in there, clarify your role as a monitor. So who are you as a monitor to each other? Attempt to get up.
How's it going? Are we ready to take some feedback? Yes, we are. Because whatever you haven't completed, I think we can fairly say and comfortably say that other people will complete the sentence for you. So, who's feeling hot and inspired, as if you're dancing around on a tin roof this morning, and wishes to share with us? And when you do so, please at least tell us what you would like to be called, at least for this session. You can change it afterwards. I've been called all kinds of things, not necessarily to my face. So, yeah, who's ready to go? Come on. Don't be shy. Okay, please. Could you
No, I was going to just ask a question about. It's not about in response to.
Okay.
To what you asked, but I think I'm sitting in a room. I have no idea who's here.
We'll get there.
From within the institution that I'm from. So at some point, I don't know.
We'll get there. Don't worry. We don't do the conventional, ooh, let me listen to 30 people right now. It just takes way too much time. Also, feel free to go up to anybody and say, hey, who are you? Where are you from? Yeah. Not what you do and all of those kind of things. When people ask me that, I just switch off. I see if I'm defined by what I do. Thank you, though, for expressing the concern that you would like to know who these people are. Especially on the dark night standing outside of the student protest, right? We'll make sure that they are clearly identified. So, we take the point. Please speak up. Tell us who you are, and at some point we're going to know a little bit more about you. If you do not speak up, so we don't get to know who you are, we may just pick on you. Giving me license to do so? Yes. Brilliant. Who wants to go first? Sure. Please.
My name is Brett.
Your hand is here, yeah?
I'm a Neil of the Neil fan, so I feel like that's good. But one of the things he said was just observing and kind of heading off to the past. So if you see a bunch of private security heading towards a bunch of students, being able to sit one of them and have a conversation and like that.
So effectively you're an observer who heads people off at the pass.
Something like that.
Okay.
In a good way.
In a good way. Head off at the pass. Yes. 2 S's. Excellent. Folks, I found out only after school that I was actually dyslexic, right? But I also learned that from W.C. Fields that every intelligent person needs to be able to spell a word more than one way. And it takes an equally intelligent audience to appreciate that. So thank you for that, though. I do appreciate all the help. I was marked 50 plus 1, and I would pass, and that would be enough for me. So I'm a 50 plus 1 percenter. And I have been all my life. So thank you for that. So essentially, you still an observer, says Your Majesty, and at some point there may be a moment at which time you feel that you can now intervene. Right. Anybody else want to complete the scripture for us? Leslie, what came up in your group? See, I'll pick on you.
I'm Leslie, and you can call me Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie.
And John talked about a monitor as being someone who appreciates the importance of listening and trying to understand.
So listen, understand. Thank you, John, Leslie, and that group. We'll say a lot more about these two things. What is it that you're actually doing when you're out there? And we've now got two particular job descriptions, observer and monitor. And hopefully during the course of this session, we'll get clarity on what each of those mean. Is that okay? And how it may be different. And one of the things that we now know is different is that the monitor, according to Your Majesty, finds an opportunity to intervene. Or there's a moment when they intervene, they step in and do something. And we have to know what that something is, what your skill set is, and what your toolbox is that you take with you. Yeah, Martin.
One Anita was exploring the thing of being a concerned insider, being part of the system, and yet concerned to make to live for peace and act for peace in a credible way. Yeah.
Carmelita?
Carnita.
Carnita.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Not syllable to me.
Carnita?
I don't want to be a monitor. I'm happy being a
Concerned insider.
So I would need to be persuaded to be a monitor. I'm not wanting to be a monitor at all in any way.
Okay, so it's just a useful skill set. That's all. And an urge to stick your nose in other people's business. With the idea that what you wanted to do is listen and understand, according to John. And we'll unpack that. Tell us a little bit more about this concerned insider role.
Yeah, I guess it's just because I came from the organization and this thing of being independent and removed. But we are part of the environment and the situation of conflicts. I mean, I'm a staff member at TWC. You know, so it's kind of this portrayal where conflict is about entrenched these positions, but there are people within that conflict that can try to mediate and play. I mean, I know there's a different meaning for mediator, but mediate what has been defined as there is no middle ground, or you cannot. So I think that's, so yeah, to try to play a positive role in terms of being able to hear both sides, but also seeing where we need to, from a principled point of view, act.
So, you're someone who's part of that arena at a particular campus. You look at it and you say, what role can I play? I'm concerned with what's going on here. I understand and maybe even known to the actors involved, because I am an actor in that. And one of the roles you see yourself playing, or we playing, is that you're there to, again, hear what's going on, listen and understand from a principled point of view. So you bring something to it, and that something may be different to what is happening at that time. Is that what you're saying? Okay. So the insider has some knowledge, some understanding, and maybe their own, what we should be and what we are particularly concerned about is assumptions and bias. We have those, we bring those. sometimes we need to test that in the arena where we are. Anything more to say?
Can I just say the term concerned? We've been having that conversation because when you the reactions by people as concerned, academics concerned, everyone is concerned about that context, the executive, the students. So we are all concerned. So I think to be, not to separate yourself as a separate.
Oh, I'm concerned.
You're not. Yeah. So I think just.
Yeah. I worry about that term too. So thank you for clarifying that. We assumed that that's where you were coming from, that something's up with you. You moved to want to get involved. And everybody's involved in some shape or another. You're thinking there may be another role to play. Okay, and you mention things like mediate, or at least listen and hear, and then change maybe the options that people take. So I'm adding a little bit to what you're saying. Let's hear from the back of the room. Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Carla. I don't have to go speaking and we have no personal experience with this, but some of the things we spoke about have been mentioned about listening, about diffusion. So being able to preempt something that looks like it's about, not necessarily as a past, maybe when it's already in the application. But I think for me, it's literally the notion of monitoring the temperature of the situation, practical things, like are people getting more upset because they're thirsty? Would it be helpful to bring water? And so that monitoring, it should also be about actually monitoring the situation and seeing if there are ways that you bring practical ways to de-escalate into that.
I'm putting other words on the board. So Carla, you spoke to? Jeanette. About this notion of looking what else you can do. That there's something going on, people have needs, and trying to be responsive to what the needs are. That's either allowing something to go up and get hot, or keep it cool and where we can all be, maybe for lack of a better word, level-headed. Don't worry, none of us are. That's okay. It's doable. I knew my handwriting was bad. Don't be sorry. I would be concerned if you didn't ask what it was. So be sorry if you don't speak up. Please do. Seek questions, ask questions of clarification. Otherwise, we get to misunderstand each other. It's the word doable. So I said to Carla and Janita, I'm putting other words up there, and we'll come back to those words. Is that okay? So, this side of the room.
So I have I really thought about it. I just thought about this. Now I had an interview once with this.
What's your name?
Sorry, Renee Vickers.
Vickers?
Yes. And he worked in a really rough neighborhood, and he, so it's touching on what you said earlier about changing the atmosphere, changing the situation in a way. Like he used absurdist humor to diffuse situations. It's just completely like if you see two guys running at each other with a knife or something, for example, you pluck a phone without a cord or something out of his pocket and put it in one guy's hand. It's something so that just like changing completely, like messing with the attitude to change, like what's happening, and make people just stop. I find that interesting.
Okay. Raise this issue of humor when we come to look at that allows you to do emergency, the intervention of whatever kind, for whatever concerned reason you might have. Because this is peculiar. I could also get clapped.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just thank you though for introducing where we're going to go with this thing about skills. John, and then we'll pick on some other folks on this side of the room who have an incomplete conversation. Yeah.
Well, two others are voice tones, eye contact, and so on. It's necessary to develop an aura of partial trustworthiness.
Okay. Couple of big words there. Voice,
Voice, eye contact,
I'm going to click on the aura one, and just spell it A-U-R-A. Yeah, and we'll say a lot more about that, John. We'll come back to you about this notion of your presence, and what does that radiate? What are you sending out by just being there? And maybe another word is demeanor, like your posture, your demeanor, your whole stance. When people look at you, what do they see? Who do they see? And is there any contradiction between their understanding of why you're there and your presence and the way you're behaving or not behaving? And we need to get clarity on that. Yeah, can we get to the incomplete conversations so we can complete it now?
There were 3 of us in the group, but only 2 of us, I'm done. Only 2 of us had a chance to speak, so that's why I was saying, no, that's what I said, because none of us hadn't had a chance to speak.
Thank you. So, Di, was it you or?
No, it was a friend.
Okay, and your friend's name is? She has to look, Laura. Okay, so Laura, what would you have spoken then? What would you have said?
I haven't done any observing yet. So
That's fine.
I don't really know, but I suppose I sort of think about who am I when I'm there and what I bring and what I want to do. And yeah.
And who are you when you're there?
Yeah, and like where you're at in the situation, how do I want to help these people, and what abilities and power do I bring because of the role I'm in or just because of who I am as a person.
And any answers to those questions?
Well, I definitely have access probably to more resources than students. And I probably have a network I should work on. Like last year as a student, in the protest, we managed to collect a lot of the people in my office all wanted to help, so we just collected money and then basically bought things for students. So it ended up in the necklace because I think most of it went to oranges and pyramid people. But it's not half of that. It's also actually I guess you bring a little bit of distance and maybe because I'm white and a bit older, I bring a bit of sort of people might listen to me in a situation I wouldn't listen to a 18-year-old black student, to be frank. And maybe I'd make people be more likely to connect with me in a way they wouldn't.
Thank you. Laura, just go behind you and then we'll come to you, Bridget, and then we'll pull it together. Please.
Hi, Roger.
Hi, Roger.
With all the terms given there, where does experience come? Experience of situation, and how to act.
And I think Laura was kind of hinting at that when she said she's maybe a little older, that what she brings, you know, maybe this thing a little bit more inside, experience, as Laura said, and how to act. So we'll put it down there. Thank you. The moment these are just words. Some of them we clarified quite a bit we haven't touched on, and we've been deliberate about that. It's going to try to put in this, paint this picture of who we are. Bridget.
Building on your sort of aspect of power is this perceived hierarchies. And when I say perceived hierarchies, it's because often they are quite sort of artificial hierarchies, and there are a lot of misunderstandings and misinformation around those, and who is actually in a position of authority and who isn't. And actually it's building some kind of ability to share information and share knowledge to level out those power and hierarchy issues.
Getting to the meat and potatoes of all this. Good, thanks, Bridget. Anybody else feels the need to speak before we go and tie this up? Please.
Just 2 thoughts as, oh sorry, Christy. Just 2 thoughts as I was listening to everybody speak. What about one's reputation as a mediator? So you, at the beginning you would come in as an unknown, but let's say it's happened for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks and you've been seen on the scene, does that make a difference?
What do you think?
Yes. I think it would.
How?
I think it could be either way, positive or negative, depending on your history, I suppose, of how you've dealt with past situations, perhaps. if people have been present.
And observing you,
And observing.
as much as you've been observing them.
Yeah.
And this consistency of presence. And as we said earlier, is there any contradiction in the perceived role or understood role of who they think you are and how you behave? We'll get back to those issues. Don't worry, we're not done. We're just surfacing where we need to go.
So I'm Ruan, and coming from the context of as a UCT student and being an observer, where as a witness, I feel like our role is primarily to be almost a passive de-escalator. By just having our presence there, we're hopefully de-escalating. And as I think Annie mentioned in the beginning, we now wanted to step into a role of being an active de-escalator. And I think there's this word that has been going around of intervention, and we're wanting to intervene. And I think there's a lot of different groups and interest groups that are wanting to intervene. But it's how does that intervention look, where the students and the private security and the police are almost wanting to assert their agenda onto those around them. For us, it's more to facilitate the agendas of the various groups in a more peaceful way, rather than asserting our own.
Okay, so you started saying something about moving from perceived passive role of one to sort of more interventionist role. You put the word agenda up there. I'm changing agendas to interest, so that we just reframe what we're saying. And we're going to challenge you with the idea is whether you have no interest to be there. Because you seem to suggest you have no interest. No, don't have an agenda. So I'm saying, you seem to suggest that you have no interest by being there. Wrong place. Because we're up to something, and we want to figure out together what that is. Okay? I did say we're going to try to pull this together, so maybe just pop while you're hot.
Hi, I'm Kim. I just wanted to follow up on that and sort of two things. I think someone mentioned impartiality somewhere, but I didn't see you right.
I didn't hear it, so thank you.
I also can't see that far. So. But to follow up on you then about the perceptions of our role or whatever, the couple of times I've been at UCT, what's been very noticeable has been that the protesters are largely black and the witnesses are largely white. And I think in this situation, in our context in South Africa, that's something we need to take into account as well. I don't know how we change that exactly, but
yeah, there's the notion of the other and surfacing that deliberately. So, right, I did see a few hands. Do those people still feel the urge to speak, or can we move and start consolidating this picture of who we are? Okay, so let's get back to this and help us plot a way forward for the next, say, 2 hours or so. So what we're dealing with is this idea of somebody who is a monitor. We now understand that a monitor is perhaps different from an observer. And that the difference is this notion of intervening, stepping into the fray, and not just witnessing the fray. The idea of witness, and Annie was talking about prophetic witness, is this idea is that you bring something and a presence that you hope would kill, to what? De-escalate, diffuse, somehow deter others from taking options they would take if you wasn't present, right? So, however, in that, there's a concern that not only that others may not know who you are, but that we may not have been acting consequent or consistent while we've been observed that belies who we say we are and why we're there. And that's a big concern. And that part of the equation in the South African context could be this, whether I'm a darker or lighter shade of you. And what dynamic does that bring? Or even whether I'm perceived to be too old, too young, whether I'm a man or a woman, too short, too fat, God knows. But there's so many other issues depending on who you're engaging, that might either assist you more or actually hinder your initial entry point to that thing. So one of the things we hope to do is get clarity as to how do we hold and conduct ourselves in a way that's consistent with the message we're trying to send and the role that we're trying to play. And that we do, when we do intervene, what does that look like? Is that okay? So if we walk away with that, would you be happy? And in your back pocket, we hope to be giving you a set of very practical skills that even relates to how you dress, the shoes you wear, and what else you carry with you. And let me just say that. Never wear shoes you cannot run in. I've seen too many flip-flops and sandals, and it's cool to go hug trees, be hippies, we all did that. Not me. I'm not about peace, I'm actually about conflict. I am. So I don't know about him, but I am. And you can ask me why. Because if there's already peace, why am I sticking my neck in there? Right? I'm about conflict. I'm about getting involved in that stuff that we somehow may not want to get our noses involved in. So, Khalid was put up with saying that one of the first things we're going to do is clarify who's out there in this arena. Who do you find in this arena? What other roles are being played? We had mediator, we had student in this case, protester maybe, call it what you like. We heard something about the police and the security services. And all of them have their interest. So maybe it's an idea at this time is just to get a sense of who's in this arena. Right? And what roles are being played and what interests each of those parties have. So we'll start there. Is that okay? And then we'll get into a little bit more clarity about the monitor and that role. Do you want to take that?
So, just to share what I put up, let's come out of the conversation.
Yes,
so is that earlier we really looked at the observer role, right? The dispassionate, passive, what's it, de-escalator. And we're really looking at this notion of the monitor now. So there's a slightly different role, but I've kind of created a continuum of intervention, if you think about it. Because each person steps into the situation in a slightly different way. And I really wanted to fix what the monitor role is. But it's useful then to think of some other roles. One role is an accompanier. So internationally, for example, we've got an organization called Peace Brigades. You may have heard about them. What they do is that they actually insert themselves with other human rights defenders. So these are, let's say it's a housing issue in Gaza, for example. You will have Peace Brigades, that they're working in South America and in a number of other countries around the world, who are accompanying that particular struggle. So they insert themselves into the group, and again, through their presence, because they're foreigners, that is hopefully a de-escalating factor. And also, if the fight is with government forces, then the government knows that you have these accompaniers. It's a much more intimate role than any of the ones that we play. Okay. We've also spoken about human shields. So these are people who insert themselves between the belligerents, and often in war situations. So that's another role of intervention between the belligerents. And we've seen, for example, in Wits, the churches played a little bit of that role on one day where they created a line between police and protesting students on campus. It got a little bit more fuzzy when the students came up behind the line, and suddenly the priests and the clergy folk were then leading the protest action. So that was slightly different, okay, to a shield. And so these are intervention roles, but these I would want to say are far more in and on the side of. Okay, so even than the monitor. What you then have are two other outsider roles, which is then the mediation role potentially. So that's also an intervention, but from a different angle. And then there's an adjudicative role to be played by the courts, for example, that makes determinations. So that's another role. Essentially, what we're talking about now is sort of this area of intervention. Okay, and so what then is the more nuanced role for a monitor, which is different to an accompanier, which is different to a human shield? Okay, so that's really the question we want to get to.
Can we clarify the interest of those parties on one side and then the interest of the other critical role players on the other side? So who are the other critical role players in the kind of, particularly in the context that we're looking at the moment, which is the student project? Who else is out there? We've already said the police. They have a set of interests. The security services have a set of interests, private security. The press. The press has interest. Political parties.
So we have SAPs, press.
Parents, political parties, press.
University workers.
The university workers, the rest of the university community, be they workers, staff, faculty, each with different access, opportunities, relationships, and power.
The government.
The government, broadly speaking, beyond political parties. Anybody else? There may be corporates and corporations and business interests.
There have been a number of businesses who've done very well out of the disruption.
Hey, there's something called the war economy, and it's not called that for nothing. There are unions, there are business interests, for or against. Yeah. Yeah, there's societal interest, both nationally, regionally, and internationally, maybe even. I'm sure we've been peppered with at least some concern from people and inquiring from others saying, what was happening in your neighborhood? Especially if you're a staffer or student, people want to know what's happening in your part of the world.
Are students homogenous?
What I was going to say, first of all, you need to divide students into postgrad and undergrad. There's quite a big difference sometimes for their view.
Protest and non-protest.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Everybody's caught up in the rap anyway. And if the university's shut, who knows what if you're protesting or not. But yeah, we get the point. Some of us are particularly more vocal and others might not be, which get us labeled as one or the other. So those are usually problematic.
Faith-based groups.
There are faith-based groups as part of this broader societal community. Schools. Yeah, there's another education sector like high schools and primary schools and secondary and hospitals. Why? Okay, so you mean there are other interests like hospitals and health sector and even schools and others that is a knock-on effect of this thing. Why do we want to know who these people are? What's the idea behind even identifying any of these actors?
They all have an agenda, or what was the other word? It's interests.
So we got to determine what the interests are. That's one of the things. How do you see this, and what do you want out of this? Right? What's your interest? What else? Why is it important that we know who's out there?
The responsibility of the audience.
Yeah, there may be something that we can put in there who says you have a responsibility and a role to do the following, either legally, statutory, or just an agreed or role or perceived role that you could play.
Thank you. What else?
Building relationships.
Yeah, we may or may not have relationships with them, and if we do have access, because that's what a relationship gives you, if not, we need to build one. We need to find somebody in our network that we can help to access that. If we can't, someone else needs to. So we want to build relationships. I'm going to start using your names if I can. So if you haven't spoke up, then I would like you to say your name. Carla. So the understanding that the effect is broader than what the immediate seems to suggest. Yeah, thank you. Wendy. So where we can, if somebody is perpetuating a story or a narrative that is problematic, and we are able to challenge that because of our access, our resources, our power, our proximity, our network, our medium at our disposal, we can seek to debunk or change or reframe that particular narrative or provide information that people can actually use that is more accurate or more on point, or maybe even just a different narrative. Okay, yeah.
Craig, I think you recognize what capital they bring into the situation. So
Okay, change that word capital, say to the rest of us. Resources. Yeah.
But it's a very broad term. In other words, they may bring social resources, they may bring emergency resources, they may bring relational resources, they may bring political resources.
Skills, all those kind of stuff I heard Leslie say. Thank you. It's just unpacking words, suitcase words like capital, Craig, that's all. Because sometimes we miss the opportunity to understand what else somebody else can bring to this equation and where we can leverage what they bring. And I think that's what you're saying. We need to recognize who's there and what they can bring to the situation. We'll get to a moment as to what is it that we want to do about the situation. Right? So we'll get there next. Renee.
Right, I think also try to identify ourselves in the story.
Absolutely crucial. Again, who are we and what are our interests? Bearing in mind that when we dawn one thing, today we act in a particular way. We can't step out of that and start acting in another way. And that's the problem that we're going to start tying you into. Why this role is a little bit more difficult, and it's going to mess with the rest of your life. And that's not a joke, right? It's going to mess up the rest of your life. Seriously, this role is going to mess up the rest of your life. Right? It's annoying. I try to be anything other than that. No, baby, you'll be fine. Watch it. Right? It's going to mess with you. So, we don't have the time today to go in understanding how do we exploit these things. That you can do. You do that all the time. People call it networking, which I'm particularly bad at. Others just call it exploitation of your friends and family, which is also cool. However you label this thing, it's simply about imposing on others and confronting them either with their role and responsibility, with their access, with their resources, capital in whatever form, and their ability to affect change in that situation. And what we're going to get clarity on is, what is the change we want to effect? Is that okay? And then in our role as a monitor, what skills do we leverage? People happy with that? Anything else about these things? Yeah, because
I just have a quick question about it. So, yesterday, for example, there were a lot of police and private security students, and I wanted to go talk to the police or the private security because I don't know, a lot of them were already.
You felt the urge.
Yeah, I don't want to build relations, but I also am worried about how that's received by the students, and they see me like. But I feel it's important, as you said, to build that relations. How do you do that without messing with your role?
Right, we're going to get there now. So just to sum up, if you will flip that over. Khalif mentioned these roles, and just to bring in the difference, as you were saying, ostensibly between this thing here
Yeah, there are groups like Peace Brigade International. There's the People in Lebanon, which is the broader sort of church-based coalition of witnesses. There's this crowd called Nonviolent Peace Force, based out of the same idea that Peace Brigade International was based on, and they basically are there to protect. They are called human rights defenders, civilian peacekeepers, and they are there to stick their nose in a situation on the side of people standing for human rights and justice, right? And they do the kind of things like sleep in people's homes that if you're under threat, walk into court or accompany you. They do act as, not particularly human shields, but it's called interpositioning, stepping in between the parties at war. They also prepare and record and disseminate information about what's going on. Folks, they are clearly identified. They walk with this every single day, everywhere they go. Whether it's this or a t-shirt, but they have this on. And the idea is you become this for the year, 2 years, or 3 years that you're doing this. You can't be getting drunk down the road with particular people, fraternize with others, and then still see yourself doing a particular role a few hours later. It will redefine your life. At some point, though, you're going to get out of that because it will affect your health. Right? So how do we support people who do this role? And if you will get detained at times, you will get harassed by security people who may understand why you're there, but they just harass you anyway. Right? And we can talk a little bit about how that comes. But this is what you wear. This is who you become for the year, 2 years, 3 years that you do this. But you have this very clear. The thing that's on here is this idea of symbols. A lot of what we do, both as observers and monitors, are present as symbolic. And there's power in that. Just that we are present. It's symbolic. We stand for something. We're going to unpack that in a few seconds. Each of these things means something to someone. Right? Some of them are more universal. Others are cross-cultural. Others may be hugely problematic to some people in the equation, including just the very colors. Which is why most things are on a fairly blank canvas. And then you add color to it. Right? You add, mostly it's khaki with something. White and something. However, in a particular arena, you have to watch what you wear, to the very point that you don't walk around with a particular color t-shirt. You've got to be aware of what people bring, and don't be seen to be fraternizing with one part or the other. And the critical thing beyond this is the fact that this, as part of a global community of activists and advocates for certain things, goes clearly with the code of conduct. Just like there's a code of conduct for monitors and observers, there's a code of conduct for here. And I've seen people move from playing these roles to becoming an advocate for one or the parties. They step out of this, they take this off and they say, I'm going to speak and I'm going to go and I'm going to defend on the right of that population in the middle of Cambodia or wherever it is, or Colombia, and I'm going to become their voice, and I take this off and I don't play this role anymore. So if you feel at any time that you're too much on this side, take this off and do that role. That's actually okay. There's no harm in that. There's no harm in becoming the activist and advocate for something. This is advocacy of a different kind. It sends out a different message. And it's not neutral. It just sends out a different message. And it's okay to take this off, but you can't wear this today, play another role tomorrow, and play another role the day after, and put this back on again. Not in the same arena. Because that is really not going to do well for the understanding of this role, and you might endanger others playing this role. Is that okay?
So
Yeah.
I was going to ask,
that question. So they playing that role, then how do you stop perception of everybody being marked with the same brush? So if you stepped out and you now decided as advocacy for one group, it may be perceived, oh, these guys are doing this, but actually they're moving in that direction. Which then kind of the whole trust thing gets a bit clouded, you know?
Yeah, that word trust.
Yeah.
How do you think this is done? Any ideas? This question about, remind me what your name is again?
Sorry, I'm Cindy.
Cindy. Okay, with a C or S? Whatever.
SC.
C, Cindy. Okay. How do you do this? How do you step out of the role and not send the message that everybody on that side is actually doing what you're doing quietly or secretly? Sometimes there's a declaration. And when you're with the parties, you actually say, I'm not that anymore. Right? There's a divorce that happens in some form, shape, or another. In a local arena, it's actually quite easier. It's easier to do than in a global arena. Because you will be seen squarely to be on that side, and when you meet the other parties, you say that I'm not doing that. So that whole process of stepping out, how it happens, how you negotiate that has to be negotiated, and we have to be mindful about how do we clarify that to others, that you're not playing this role anymore. Okay, so that divorce needs to happen. And you're right, it goes together with the process. So, getting back to this, and the difference between the two. Essentially, you're saying there is no difference. Monitor, there is no difference. Don't think because you're now going to play the observer role, which is one thing, and you have peace and justice witness little bib on, and when you play your monitor role, you have no bib on. No, you do. That's the catch. Because very much the same way, you're going to have to wear something that sends a message to people as to who you are. There is no such thing as working incognito. Some of us may be able to do that. Why? Because our proximity to one or more of the parties. Okay? And we'll clarify that whole different roles. But if you're taking on this, and you're acting in consort with others, then you need to stand for whatever that symbolizes. And what one does and not the other affects everybody. It's like the police. It's like one security. One security guard does something, all security is bad. One police does something, all police are tainted. One monitor sleeps with the local, everybody ought to be shot. No. Not that that happens on my watch, but you get fired. But it's or one monitor is seen with a stone in the hand. You could be throwing the stone away. Don't pick it up, kick it rather. Because all they need to do in the era of cell phones is to see you with the stone, and you're actually taking it over there. But any picture out of context, people make up their own story, right? So rather just move the stone gently with your foot like this. Or say, I'm now moving it. But if you're going to start wearing funny colors and funny hats and acting like a clown, yeah, you know, sometimes you can get away with us. Some of us have that inbuilt ability to use humor. But you're drawing attention to yourself anyway. Right? Just make sure that how you draw attention to yourself is actually in keeping with the message you want to send and the kind of relationship that you want to build. This is a national peace structure, sort of when did this come out? Whatever, we had the peace accord, that early 19 nonsense thing that went on, which we then dropped. We maybe should have picked it up again, but who knows? The point is, what do you see? You see a clear number. The number and the person went together. So you can say number 24 acted in this way. Okay, so you hold accountable. If we say that police and private security should be clearly identifiable, then maybe we should be clearly identifiable. So putting the name on there means nothing. People are not going to remember it was Laura, Lucy, Cindy, because, you know, then simply they're not going to. They're going to say number 24 because they can see it. So if you wear this, know that this goes together with a particular set of messages, and this was the official one, or the official setup. Then we had a lot of where the faith-based people were involved in was this, was the network of independent monitors. What was in? Do you notice something? What do you notice? Yeah, it's in multiple languages. It was different in KwaZulu-Natal, different in Gauteng, and different in Cape Town. Okay, and this was a network similar to what is now being built today that allowed these folks to do that. But again, the access and opportunity that this allowed you was structurally very, very different. Why? Because this was supported by the official one. These two act in consort with each other, support each other's messages, and are then able to gain access to the police, the private security, and everybody else. Okay? So you will be wearing one of these if we are serious about that. At the moment, it is about the opportunity to step in and just say, how can I help? Until such time as we got that sorted out. Should we take a quick 5-minute body break? And then we'll start going into the dynamics of giving expression to your role. Is that okay? Thank you. Take a quick body break. If you're going too fast, help us. Just focusing as to what I'm trying to do. Make this
Yes.
So you can watch the end. Okay.
So what are you looking at? What is it? What would you like to walk away
On Tuesday we didn't have a session.
It's so calculated, okay? So,
I sent an email to me